We've done a lot of talking about speed here, so I think it's a good segue into talking about X1. You guys have been, in my opinion, a little bit humble, a little bit modest about the level of speed at which you are able to integrate. Talk about why X1 and how has that changed the game for being able to get an integration up and running.
I'll start at the highest level. If you're going to put in a TMS, 9 times out of 10, somebody's going to want you to integrate to something. If you're going to be successful in TMS, you're going to need to integrate with partners and with carriers and do all those things, and you're going to need to do them really well. How do you separate those things? You don't want the integration to interfere with the functionality of the TMS. So what we always thought about is making sure we had those things separate so that we can develop Corsair and we can develop the integration layer X1. And those two things are independent of one another, but they're tightly related. And our ability, knowing that we're going to have to interface with all of the mess of the outside world, we might be integrating with a very sophisticated ERP, all the way down to integrating with a mailbox pull of an Excel spreadsheet somewhere. And we needed to do that all very quickly and very easily. So we invested quite a bit in the development of X1 and making it its own standalone product that really says, I need to be able to integrate and interface with anything, and I need to do it quickly. And again, because of the user forward concepts, how can we take what has traditionally been a very developer heavy task and change that into maybe a more technical user, lower those barriers to make those integrations faster. And we've concentrated on that both from a process standpoint and from a technology standpoint, which these guys can talk about. But just at the business level, that understanding of that fundamental need and the cost that it can be when you're making a TMS choice. The integration pieces are part of the huge part of the traditional expense and often very high expense of integrating. How can we simplify that problem? How can we take that problem away? And that's what that X1 is all about.
Traditionally, integrations are very much a technology problem, right? A lot of companies that have to integrate, they throw that task over, the technology team figures it out, right? But in reality, integrations are a business problem, right? It's a B2B type of operation. So we wanted to make sure that B2B operation is as close to the business as possible, meaning how can we get business users, technical business users, really spearheading these integrations without having the developers. And so X1 really takes that to heart. We're going to provide a tool that allows technical business people to do a majority of these integrations. On top of that, right, integrations are complicated, right? There's protocols and security involved and translations and different file formats and different ERPs. Like Warren said, we might be dealing with a AS400 or we might be dealing with SAP. Or with X1, you don't really need a developer to do that, right? It's built for a technical business user to be able to configure that integration using the tool. Not to mention that business user would be assisted by AI, where AI is saying, hey, here's what we think this integration should look like. Here's what a script to translate from this source to this target would look like, right? And then a business user effectively gets a automatic code generation for a translation script. Right? So X1 takes this need for traditional developers and we're moving it closer and closer to the business side as opposed to making it a technology problem. That, with the AI enhancements we're putting into it, are making it a really good product. We realize this is a problem in supply chain. Google just released a product. It's not even released yet. It's an early access that literally is doing the same exact thing. And it's eerily close to what X1 is. And so when we were looking at it, we were like, what the hell? It's almost like they took a copy of what we did. So while from one side, we're like, oh, wow, Google's releasing something that's really close to us. That kind of sucks. At the same time, we're like, hold on, we must be doing something right here. If Google is releasing a tool, there's clearly a need for it in the industry. We're more tailored toward the supply chain process, the supply chain industry, and you get a lot more out of the box when it comes to connecting B2B in the supply chain industry.
And I think it's important to keep in mind that X1 is a totally separate, it's definitely for installing and putting in place a TMS, but it also is totally neutral. Folks who have problems connecting a warehouse management system to a TMS to an ERP, any of those kinds of connections, needing to communicate out with carriers. We've seen problems in the industry of people communicating with some of the products that are out there right now to broadcast out to carriers and connect with carriers. We wanted to do that better. So that's why X1 can stand alone. It's not tied to Corsair. You don't have to have Corsair to get X1. Certainly it's a great advantage for us in terms of Corsair, but it also does stand alone.